Hey y'all, I'm Lauren and welcome to Cantina Cast. Today I am talking about The Edge of Balance, Part 4, written by Shima Shinya and Daniel Jose Older. This is a manga which is part of Star Wars The High Republic Phase 3. The Edge of Balance manga series has been one of the highlights of The High Republic Phase 3 for me. I've really just enjoyed the progression of the story and the characters that are part of it. It's not like a must read in the way that if you decide to not read this manga, you're going to be not understanding the rest of the High Republic. It does very much feel like its own kind of side story. However, even though it's a side story, I actually at times have been more invested in these characters than some of the characters from the main story. So it is one of those things where it's like, regardless of if it's a must read or not, it is one of my favorite parts of the High Republic. I've really just enjoyed seeing Lily grow as a character. That's our main Jedi character in this series. And then also Arkoff is just a really cool Jedi to watch. He's a Wookiee Jedi from this series. We actually have gotten a couple of cool Aslan Rel moments in this series as well, even though Aslan Rel hasn't really been doing it for me in some of the other main High Republic novels. In this series, sometimes he kind of works for me. So I was already looking forward to this next installment in the manga series just for all those reasons. In part 4, we do see a continuation of the story that has already been laid out. This one does feel very much like you need to be reading the other manga to be able to follow this one. There's been a couple of Edge of Balance stories that do kind of like branch off and kind of do their own thing. But this one in particular, like the ones that are numbered, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are very much following the same story arc with the same characters, and you want to read them in order. But there's other ones that branch off. So the Edge of Balance Precedent and the Edge of Balance Premonition, they are manga stories that are part of this series, but they're kind of doing their own thing. Also, the Edge of Balance Part 4 does take place before Into the Light. My Into the Light review video came out recently, but this manga, if you are following this manga story, technically it would come before Into the Light. But I read them out of order and I was fine. I would say the main difference is that Baron Bulin is still part of the Nihil in the Edge of Balance Part 4. And the truce between the Drengir and the Jedi is still going on in the Edge of Balance Part 4. But honestly, I have kind of given up on reading the High Republic perfectly in order because there have been some stories that have come out that take place at around the same time, but not exactly. Or like something will be published first, but actually technically it comes before some other book that was published before it. Like I kind of honestly just gave up on trying to stay perfectly in order. A lot of times now what I'll do with the High Republic is I'll just start reading, and then if I realize that something hasn't happened yet that has happened in other stuff that I've read, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this comes before XYZ. It just got to be a lot to follow once books started coming out that were technically happening partially at the same time and partially not. So, oh well. So I am going to start talking about the Edge of Balance spoilers. So if you haven't read this series and you're planning on it, now would be your time to turn back. So we pick up in part 4 with pretty much right where we left off in part 3. We do have Sav and Arkoff are going to go save Zimtok and Shosho, who were kidnapped by the Nihil at the end of the last installment. On their way to go do that, they do pick up a defecting Nihil called Marktan. And this is another indication, just like we've gotten in a couple of other few recent High Republic books, that the Nihil are starting to fall apart. There's a lot of Nihil that are defecting because they're realizing that being a Nihil is not really a good situation for them. And Marktan is just like one more example of that. Something kind of fun that happens is because their ship is destroyed by scav droids and they need another ship, Sav calls Dex the beloved prequel character. So it was cool to see him pop up in this manga, which I wasn't expecting. That was fun that Dex not only provides another ship, but also shows up to join Sav and Arkoff on their mission to save Zimtok and Shosho. Zimtok and Shosho actually escape on their own before Sav, Arkoff, and Dex even get there. So they end up being okay. However, they do call Sav and say that Niv Drendau, who is on the ship that they were captured on, is actually going to Banshee with Baron Bulin and a bunch of Nihil because they know that Jedi are on Banshee. So Nihil are headed to Banshee and everybody needs to get ready. And that's exactly what they're doing. Lily and the rest of the community on Banshee are all preparing for an upcoming attack. At this time, there is still a truce between the Drengir and the Jedi, which has been discussed in previous installments of The Edge of Balance. But at the beginning of this one, the Drengir are actually leaving Banshee. It was kind of weird because they tell Lily that they need a ship, and Lily gives them one. I know there's a truce, but I don't know if I would trust them like quite like that. I don't know if I would give a bunch of people eating monsters a ship to just go wherever they want, but that is what Lily does. And the Drengir say that they are going to go see the Great Progenitor on Iram because they need to warn the other Drengir about the Blight and prepare themselves for what they're going to do about that. And that's pretty much the last that we see of the Drengir in this installment. I don't expect that they're going to be in the Edge of Balance Premonition. That's the next installment. That's kind of a side story. I'm expecting that the Drengir are not going to be in that either. I think we're kind of done with the Drengir now, but we'll see if that changes. So pretty much everybody gets to Banshee at the same time. Sav, Arkoff, and Dex, as well as the Nihil and Zimtok and Shosho. And there is a battle between the Nihil and the Jedi, which we've known has been coming. During this battle, Mark Tan and the rest of the community on Banshee that are not Jedi, they take on the Nameless and are in charge of killing as many of the Nameless as they can while the Jedi fight the Nihil. During this battle, there is a moment where Aslan Rel and Baron Bulin have a confrontation, and it seems like the two of them are remembering each other from their past when they were both a lot younger. This is a reference to Phase 2, where Bulin was actually a child in the Path of the Open Hand cult. And that is where Aslan Rel had his encounter with the Nameless that destroyed him psychologically. But the two of them have kind of a moment where they're remembering each other, and Bulin is trying to convince Aslan Rel to join him. It was kind of interesting because it seems like Bulin might be successful in this. But then what happens is these younglings come along. Bulin seems like he's going to hurt them. And Aslan Rel immediately turns on Baron Bulin and protects the younglings and sends Bulin away. So Aslan does have a soft spot for younglings. And even though Aslan is very of the dark side and manipulative and problematic and all that, it does seem like he draws the line at innocent children, which, hey, that's a good thing. So the Jedi win the battle, of course, and the Nihil all flee. So we leave off with kind of the understanding that life is going on. A lot of people are sticking around to help Banshee rebuild once again. Feels like in every issue of this manga, Banshee is having to like rebuild itself from the ground up once again. But everybody's sticking around to contribute to that. And we also do see that everybody fully views Lily as the community leader. And it really seems like it's going to stay that way because everybody is really depending on her. And she's really just fully come into her role as the leader of this community. And they all really trust her with that. And that is where this issue leaves off. I am soon going to be covering the Edge of Balance Premonition, which it looks like is going to be like a side story about Yoda during this battle. And I believe that that is going to be the last installment of the Edge of Balance because we're getting so close to the end. Let me know in the comments if you've been following this series or if you're considering picking it up. And thanks so much for joining, y'all. I hope that y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.